You've been praying for breakthrough, but what if the reason why it hasn't happened yet is because you've been so focused on one way for it to come that you've been missing God's actual plan? Today, I am going to show you how being so fixated on the wrong path will keep you stuck and how to recognize the real thing when you see it. I want to read to you today a story in the Bible. And if you want to follow along, go to John chapter 5, verses 1 through 9. It says, "Afterward, Jesus returned to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish holidays. Inside the city, near the sheep gate, was the pool of Bethesda with 5 covered porches. Crowds of sick people, blind, lame, or paralyzed, lay on the porches. One of the men lying there had been sick for 38 years. When Jesus saw him and knew he had been ill for a long time, he asked him, 'Would you like to get well?' 'I can't, sir,' the sick man said, 'for I have no one to put me into the pool when the water bubbles up. Someone else always gets there ahead of me.' Jesus told him, 'Stand up, pick up your mat, and walk.' Instantly, the man was healed. He rolled up his sleeping mat and began walking." So I want to stop right there. In this story, Jesus came across a man who had been sick for 38 years. When Jesus asked this man, does he want to be healed? Immediately, this man said that he couldn't, and he started explaining a reasoning as to why that healing was not possible for him. But if you notice in this story, the path of healing that this man explained as the reasoning as to why he cannot be healed is not the way that Jesus went about healing him. This man said that he could not be healed because he had no one to put him into the water and carry him when it bubbles up. But the way that Jesus went about healing him was commanding him to stand up, pick up his mat, and walk. It had nothing to do with going into the water. It had nothing to do with someone holding him up and helping him. The way that Jesus went about his healing was completely different than the way that this man thought was stopping and blocking him from getting something that he desired. And as I was reading the story a couple weeks ago, God spoke to me and he said, your way is what's holding you back. It's not God that's holding you back. It's not your capability and potential that's holding you back, but it's your way, your process that you are trying to take to get this thing that is holding you back. See, as Christians, I notice that a lot of us are good at trusting God for something, but we are not good at trusting him for the process and the journey to getting that thing. What we will usually do is we will go to God and we will say, hey, this is something that I want to see happen in my life. This is something that I desire. And we'll trust him and we'll pray for him to bring us that thing. But when it comes to the process of actually trying to get that thing, actually trying to reach that thing, we will look for ways that we feel is logical. For a lot of us, we'll look at what the norm is. Let's go back to the story of this man who needed healing in John. When Jesus asked him, would you like to be healed? His reasoning was saying, no, I have no one to put me in the pool when the water bubbles up. Someone always gets there ahead of me. The part where he said, someone always gets there ahead of me, shows us that there was a lot of people who was using this process to be healed in his time. This was the standard. This was the norm. So this man was looking at what he felt was logical for his desire. And once he started seeing roadblocks and obstacles on that journey, it started to put doubt in his head and make him feel like healing was impossible for him. And we do the same thing. We look for logical ways to get things. And once that logical way seems unlogical in our lives, we allow doubt to creep in and tell us that this thing that we are praying for is never going to happen. Another thing that we look at is resources that we lack to make that logical thing happen. Let's go back to the story of the sick man in John. He told Jesus that he could not be healed because he does not have anyone to put him in the water when the water bubbles up. The resource that he needed was people. He needed someone to physically pick him up and carry him and put him into the water. So he looked at the logical journey that he felt he needed to take. He broke down what resources it would take for him to actually succeed on that journey. And once he realized that he lacked those resources, he told himself that this logical journey is no longer possible for me. And we do the exact same thing. How many times have you prayed for something and then you thought about the journey that it will take for you to get there? And then you told yourself, oh, I can't buy that car because I have bad credit. That's your resource. I can't upgrade to a new house. I don't have enough money. Money's your resource. I can't go on that couple's retreat in a year and a half. I don't have a spouse. That's your resource. You look at the logical journey that you've created for yourself. Then you realize that you lack resources to succeed on that journey. And then you allow that to talk yourself into believing that you cannot have this thing that you've been praying for. But if you notice, the resources that this man thought that he needed had absolutely nothing to do with the journey that Jesus took him on. The resources that he thought he was lacking to get his breakthrough was not needed on the road that God actually used to give him his breakthrough. And this is why God is trying to tell you the things that matter to you does not matter to me. The things that you think you need is not things that you need when you take my path. If you would stop trying to tell me how to do it, if you would stop trying to tell me what to give you to make this thing happen, if you would stop trying to tell me what's blocking you, I can actually get to you and help you get what you're desiring. If God actually felt like you needed that resource in order to get this thing that you are praying for, and if God confirmed to you that this thing that you have been seeking and working towards is something that he wants to give you, trust and believe if that resource was actually needed, God will provide you with it. God will not send you into a journey without supplying you everything you need to sustain that journey. So if God is not opening a door to that resource, like the man in the story with Jesus, if God is not opening a door for someone to come and pick you up and put you into the water, then that is clearly him telling you that resource is not needed for your breakthrough. So stop being so fixated on that resource. Stop being so fixated on that way and that path, and actually come and ask me how to get to where I'm trying to take you. And that brings me to my next point. Because as long as you are fixated on this path that you feel like you need to take to get what God is trying to give you, you will never see God's actual plan of how to get there. Now, if you look up the definition of the word fixation on Google, I was about to say in the Bible, child, on Google, it means that you are standing firm on something or you have an obsessive interest in something. Now, in previous podcast episodes, especially episode 199, we talked about what it looks like to stand firm on something and be crazy and be delusional. We talked about standing firm, being to a point when people try to come and they try to speak the opposite to you, you instantly block it out because you trust and believe so hard in a thing that you are standing firm on. Now, that's a good thing when you're standing firm on something that God gave you, but it's a bad thing when you're standing firm on something that is blocking you from the thing that God gave you. When you stand firm on the logical way that you've created to get your breakthrough, you block out any and everything that does not match what you believe. And so when God tries to come and he tries to reveal his actual plan to you, his actual path to you, you are standing firm on this logical way so hard that you block it, you reject it, you don't even acknowledge it. And when you stand so firm on your logical way, even when it transitions and it starts to feel unlogical, you still refuse to believe anything else. You still believe in that path. You still believe in that logical path. You just don't believe that you can do it. And that's why you can't shift. You can't go in a different direction. All you can do is stay on this road, but just stop. Just stop and say, I can't go any further because I don't have the capability to do so. I can't go any further because I don't have the resources to do so. I refuse to get off this road, but I'm just going to stand here in the middle of the street. I might go back on the same road, or I might stay here and just remain stuck, but I refuse to go forward and I refuse to redirect to another route. I really hope that this is making sense to you. God wants you to understand that he does want to bless you. He does want to help you. but he wants to do it in his way, not in yours. He wants you to understand that the reason why it feels like you are stuck, the reason why it feels like you have been on this road for so long and no doors and no opportunities are opening is not because he said no to the desire. It's not because you're not capable of having it, but it's because he wants you to get on path with his plan. He does not want to follow yours. You have to get out of the mentality of thinking that things should happen in a way that you expect it to happen, and start seeking God to ask him, how does he want this to happen? And so, if you want to get fixated on God's plan, you have to move the same way that the sick man in the story of John moved with Jesus. If you go to verses 6-9, after Jesus asked the man, would you like to be healed? This man told Jesus the reason why it was not possible. And some people might ask, well, that's doubt. How did that help that man get healed? But I want you to understand something. Doubt is normal. Having negative thoughts and questioning thoughts creep into your head is very normal. So having doubt is not the problem. The problem is how you respond to that doubt. Are you going to respond in a way where you're so fixated on that doubt you refuse to believe anything else? Or are you going to release those doubts and get help over those doubts? See, the way that the man responded was by releasing and getting help over those doubts. And one may question, well, how do we know that? Because it sure did sound like he said to Jesus, I can't do this, and this is the reason why. The way that we know that this man spoke that in a way of getting help instead of being fixated on his belief is that when Jesus responded to him, notice, Jesus did not acknowledge his doubts. Jesus did not acknowledge his unbelief. Jesus responded and spoke to him and told him another way to get his healing. And immediately the man was obedient. See, if he was so fixated on his way, when Jesus spoke to him another route, he would have refused to take it. But the way that we know he was releasing that to Jesus and asking him for his help is that when Jesus came and gave him help, gave him another strategy that was completely different than what he thought he needed to do, gave him another strategy that did not require the resources this man thought he needed to have. When Jesus came and offered a solution to this man's doubt, the man immediately obeyed. This is what you have to do. Give your doubts to God. If you feel like what you've been praying for or what you used to desire but no longer desire is not possible anymore, tell God the truth. That man told Jesus the truth. He said, I can't be healed. This can't happen for me. And this is the reason why. Tell God the truth. He's not going to be mad at you. If you feel like I can't have this thing, I can't accomplish this vision that you put inside my head, it won't happen for me. Tell God the truth and then tell him why. Because when you do that, you're opening a door for God to help you. And as he responds and he walks through that door and he redirects your thoughts and gives you new plans, stand firm and become fixated on what he said instead of what you want to happen. The main thing that I want you to take away from this today is that the next time you feel doubt creep in, do not become fixated on it. Take that doubt back to God. Let him respond to you and obey the way that he responds to you. Even if it doesn't make sense, even if it feels scary, obey what he says, because that is the key to your breakthrough. And so before we go, I do have an action step that I want to give you to do this week. So sometime this week, I want you to write down one area in your life where you have been praying for a change. Underneath it, I want you to list the one way you've been expecting God to move. And then I want you to say this prayer. God, if I am fixated on my way, reveal your way instead. Help me to hear you clearly and obey you immediately. Then be open this week to his instructions, his opportunities, or his ideas that are completely different from what you imagined. And so that is all that I have for you today. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure that you subscribe so that you get a notification every time a new episode is released. Also, leave a review and let me and others know how you enjoyed the show. And if you want to stay connected, follow me on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at Prospering with Christ. But that's all I have for you today, and I will see you next week.